All right, so I'm back, and right now I think I'm just going to work the text. So let's look at Proverbs 31, verses 8 through 9. And we talked about open your mouth for the speechless, in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and the needy. And so what I wrote some notes in my Bible talking about here, King Lemuel, I hope I said that right, mother is telling him in this particular set of passages, telling him how to live as a just and righteous and wise king. Okay, and so this kind of comes right before start talking about the virtuous wife, which everybody, talks about being that virtuous wife and that Proverbs 31 woman. And so she's telling him what he needs to do, make sure he speaks up. She talked about, or I'm talking about those that are the speechless, those that are oppressed, those that are marginalized or weak. It is a call to advocacy. It talks about in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Here, those are those that have been unjustly condemned, or those that are vulnerable. As we previously stated, as believers, it is our responsibility, okay, to defend the voiceless and the oppressed. It says, open your mouth. Okay, twice it has said, open your mouth. Okay, if you didn't catch it the first time, it's saying it again. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and the needy. This is, to me, when you're pleading the cause for the poor and the needy, that is a act of compassion. And it is so unfortunate that people lack sympathy and empathy, but they still want to say that they're believers. But nevertheless, that's a sermon for a whole nother day. But use your position, whatever your position is, and your voice for justice. Be fair and impartial. And so that was the text. What led me to doing this study, period, was Proverbs 31, verse 8 through 9. And so I read some other verses that kind of tied in to support this. And so one being, if I have time, I'm going to try to read all of them, but I definitely want to hit on several of them. One being Job 29. Let me see if I can find it right quick. I did not flag these. Job 29, verses 12 through 17. It says, 12 through 17. It says, because I delivered the poor who cried out, okay, the fatherless and the one who had no helper. Here it's talking about defending people. Okay, recalling his role as a protector to those that were vulnerable. And so verse 13 says, the blessing of a perishing man came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. Here again, we have compassion that's in action. And for this particular widow, the actions that he had brought hope during a time of despair. And so when we look at verses 14, it says, I put on righteousness and it clothed me. My justice was like a robe and a turban. Not something that just some routine, but it was something that he did on a regular basis. It was something that was a part of him that he did daily. And so living a life of holiness and being fair. Okay, verse 15, it says, I was eyes to the blind, okay, and I was feet to the lame. Again, showing that empathy for those with physical limitations and supporting the weak, all right, supporting the vulnerable. Verse 16 says, I was a father to the poor, and I searched out the cause that I did not know. Again, here telling them, treating everyone as family, treating people fairly, and not to turn a blind eye, and look for ways and opportunities to help other people. And so verse 17, which was the last one, says, I broke the fangs, okay, of the wicked and plucked the victim from his teeth. I broke the fangs of the wicked, meaning rendered them useless or of less harm to other people, and plucked the victim from his teeth, meaning delivered and rescued that particular person. So Job 29, verse 12 through 17, another set of verses that I read came from Psalms 82. Y'all, It is so good when you can take deep dives and highlight and cross-reference. Just gives you such a deeper understanding. Psalms 82 verse 3 through 5. If I get a chance, I will try to even take pictures of my notes that I wrote directly in my Bible. Anyway, Psalms 82 verses 3 through 5. Verse 3 says, defend the poor and the fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and the needy. Deliver the poor and the needy. Free them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are unstable. Okay, that's verse 3 through 5 of Psalms 82. Again, letting you know, for one, we as believers, we need to make sure that we're praying for those in leadership positions, because leaders should be agents of justice and peace. And so we need to pray for the leaders to have integrity, okay, to be morally right. And so when it talks about defending the poor, again, that's a command for us to represent, to defend those that are oppressed, ensure that there's equity across the board. And so it talks about deliver the poor and the needy, meaning to rescue them, all right? And then I love verse 5. It says, they do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. Again, spiritual blindness, all right? So we need to make sure that when we free people, that latter part of verse 4, it says, free them from the hand of the wicked. When we free these people or help people, we will need to make sure that the conditions are conducive for them to be able to live without being in hostile environments or whatever the case may be. Free them or remove them from being exploited. And so it talks about in verse 5, people being spiritually blind, serving those in need by defending and advocating them for fairness, that the leaders that contribute to the problem. That's why we need to pray for our leaders, because they're in a position to make an impact, to make a positive change. And if they're not doing what thus said the Lord, then a lot of people are going to be harmed because said leaders did not do what they should have done. So again, leaders can contribute to the problem if they don't take their position from a standpoint of being excellent in mind as it relates to what God has said and living according to his standards. And so it talks about ignorance because of their lack of knowledge of his law, okay? And God is going to handle them accordingly. So nevertheless, that's a whole another message. Let's look over at, let's see, Isaiah 58. I think I have time. Isaiah 58 verses 9 through 10. Isaiah 58 verse 9 through 10. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry, and he will say, here I am. Okay, that's verse 9. And then we look at verse 10. It says, continuing on here with verse 9, if you take away the yoke from the midst, the pointing of the finger and speaking wickedness, if you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and your darkness shall be as the noonday. Oh, wow. That's deep. Okay, so I want to make sure I read over that to you. It's just something about the presence of God. He will shine and bring light in during dark times. And so some other verses that I read was Leviticus 19 and 15, as well as Isaiah 1 and 17. Let's see if I have enough time to read Isaiah 1 and 17 before this ends. 1 and 17. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Rebuke the oppressor. Defend the fatherless. Plead for the widow. Okay, that's verse 17. Meaning seek to actively pursue, to do right, to stand up for the oppressed, the abused, those that just need somebody to advocate on their behalf. So I'll be back with the next phase. All right, part 3.